This is Laura Sanchez, and welcome to episode 4 of Equine Travels with Laura. Okay, there you go. Now, that's a little bit better. It is Sunday, January 29th, 2012, and welcome again to my video logs. I don't know if you can see her, but Zelia's on the bed with me, and here's Moibel, and here's Arcangelo. My other two cats are downstairs, and the chickens are outside. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm pretty tired, because today was a pretty amazing day. I rode both my horses, and I had a lesson with Jill Jewett, but that's a topic for another day. Today I wanted to talk on Equine Travels with Laura about Rennie's inspection for the North American Sport Pony Registry. You'll remember that the last video I did, I was talking about Rennie's birth and about how amazing he was and how good his mother, Dachshund Speckled Rock, was. And so I wanted to talk to you about how he got inspected. This is what he was like. At the time, he was just a teeny tiny, I don't think you can see this too well, he was just a teeny tiny little scamp. He was truly just a little bit over 4 months old. And he had been weaned at 4 months. I wanted him to be taken a little bit longer before the weaning. But he had a pal who you can't see right there, Ruthie. And so she was a little bit older than him, and they were going to be weaned on the same day. And he was no responsible boy, so he was ready. And then shortly after that, he was going to get inspected. He had to travel up to Michigan. I can't remember quite the name of the place now. I'm embarrassed. You can find it on our blog. It was over 100 miles from where he was living, and we had to travel up there, and there was going to be a judge who flew in from Germany to inspect the ponies. And so his mother had already belonged to the American Paint Horse Association and the Foundation Horse Registry, because I was proud of her heritage. And she was going to be inspected to be part of the North American Sport Pony Registry, as so was her baby, little Rennie. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted to kind of protect him in life. I figured that if people saw that there were papers attached to Rennie, that they might realize that he's a loved pony who had a lot of good care. And so that was the logic. As an aside, it turned out to be a good thing, because when those people dumped Haley at the auction, to talk about something negative, one of the things that the person who rescued her said was that they were just, when they opened up the book, just amazed that she had all of her medical records, and she had 3 pedigree papers. And so they knew that there was a lot of love behind her. And I wanted Rennie to have that kind of protection too. I didn't know I would ever need it, but it turns out you need good insurance. And so, anyway, now to more positive things. At the time, Rennie was just, oh my gosh, just 4 months and a few weeks old. And he was just a little skinny mini and super small, and he had the cutest little rump, and his tail was still short, and his mane was just super curly and stood straight up on end. He was adorable. He was crazy adorable. And because I'd been with him every single day of his life, he was already really well socialized, and he would be happy to be led around. And he was Mr. Let's hang out with Grandma. And he always wanted to be in the middle of the pack and know what was going on. So I knew that he would be pretty good about traveling, but I was still a little bit nervous. At the time, he had to be, I was very concerned with doing everything right. And so I knew he had to have, his blood work done and DNA testing, and he had to have his mane braided for the big event. And so Darla Lee, this really famous quarter horse trainer at the time, she rented this facility that Rennie was boarding at, and she was having Rennie as her guest. She braided him and Haley, and they looked amazing. They just looked so cute and professional. I couldn't get over it. But anyway, the day we had to travel, so this entire thing is just going to be how good Rennie is. The day we had to travel over 100 miles to get to the facility, Rennie, he'd been parted from his mother, and so we were kind of talking about how on earth to kind of get him there safely. And it was decided that that we would just kind of take the middle part away, and that Haley would be tied up at the front of the trailer, and that Rennie could just kind of hang beside her. And so we opened it, and it was a ramp. Haley was in there. She was fine and tied. And then when we pulled Rennie out of his stall, he stood at the bottom of the ramp, and he just kind of looked like, "What? What do you want me to do?" And Haley looked over her shoulder at him, and she made this one whinny nicker, just nickered at him. And I had my little hand over his back, trying to comfort him. And as soon as he heard his mom whicker, he put his little ears forward and he trotted up that ramp, and he was fine. He went right beside her, and he was totally fine. He was happy to be beside her. So then we traveled over 100 miles, and we got there at dark at this really big barn. The lady is a surgeon, and she has this really beautiful facility for driving. So it was the most amazing barn and indoor arena. But it had a beautiful viewing room and beautiful kind of kitchen and relaxation area. It was just a really wonderful place. But we arrived at dark, and I was a little bit nervous because it was Rennie's first super big trip. And so we opened that back door, and that pony was just looking at me all alert. Looked at me right over his shoulder, and his entire expression said, "Grandma!" And so I walked up, and I got him. And he was happy to walk carefully down the ramp. And it was pitch dark, and so he stood in the grass with me, and we waited for our friend to get Haley off the trailer, and he was perfectly calm and pleasant. He couldn't have been more relaxed. He didn't take one step anywhere. He was just with Grandma, just fine. And so then the cool thing was, as we were walking into the barn to register and get his stall, he stood at the open doorway, and he went, "Whee!" This happy little whinny. And the entire whinny, all it said was, "Rennie's in the house, Rennie's in the house." So I just was so proud of him right there and then. We put him in his stall, and he was happy to be across the aisle away from his ma. He felt completely fine. He slept well that night. And the next morning we got up early and we were feeding him. And what was really hilarious was he had his little braids in his mane, and he looked adorable. And he was Mr. Serious about breakfast. We put his grain in his thing, and I was trying to fuss with him and pet him because he looked so cute. And he went like this, boom, with his back leg. And he got me right on the leg. And it was really funny because you could see him, his little expression was, "Oops, kicked Grandma." And so he looked like he was trying to make it look like an accident. He pulled his leg back and he's like, "Oops." But he never took his face out of the grain and just kept on eating. Anyway, our boy was adorable at that inspection. I was proud of his ma. His ma looked like $1 million. She was glossy and shiny and gorgeous. She kept herself together, and she just looked so good. And then Rennie was just as cute as a button. In the inspection, he's supposed to kind of trot and walk a triangle, and then he's supposed to be run loose in the arena. And what was funny is that he was so worked up that as soon as he was let loose, he wanted to rear on his mom. He was trying to rear on her and get at her and stuff. He hadn't been with her in a while. He kind of missed her, I guess, and he didn't know what to do. And Haley kind of shot out a kick at him, like a get away at me kick. And the German judge looked at her approvingly and said, "What a very good mother. She's telling him to behave." And so that was kind of a hoot that she praised the mother for kicking the baby. But anyway, he was great. He did so well, and he was so well behaved. And at the very end of the inspection, when it was all over, and you think he'd be frustrated, he just walked right on up the ramp, and he looked like $1 million. There was another lady there who had a colt from this really famous German riding pony, Makuba, and he was so poorly behaved. He was like a nut the entire time. And so my Rennie, at 4 months old, just looked like a tiny pony genius. It was awesome. It was the best experience ever. So then we drove home after his inspection, and I put him out in the pasture, and he had had it. By then he was like, this is enough. He'd had a couple days without being on pasture and having to be a grown-up. So I went out to the pasture, and I was trying to take out the braids, and it was the first time he'd ever been naughty, and probably the only time, really. He kept on going, "Get away from me, Grandma, get away," and he'd push his little neck at me and say, "Leave me alone." And so the sad thing about the whole inspection, there was two sad things. One was there was a little bit older of a pony. She was this gray, beautiful kind of Arab cross pony, and she was there to get her higher ranking. And so she had to kind of jump through the chute, and she had to do a bunch of things, and she did it beautifully. She was just beautiful. And then at the end of it, the German judge, she came walking down the aisleway, and it looked like it was a gun case. And in the gun case, she had the official brand for the North American Sport Pony Registry. And she freeze branded that mare, and I felt so bad because the mare's entire expression was, "Oh, how could you do that?" And so that was sad. And I knew I would not get Rennie freeze branded, or Haley either. And I was teaching my Jumbo 101 at the time, and I asked my students to vote. I told them all about it. We were talking about symbols and culture and subcultures in society, and I asked them, what was the likelihood that I would get my baby freeze branded? And 300 of those students said, "No way, she would never do it." So there you go. So that was one sad thing, to see that little obedient, sweet mare get freeze branded. And then the other one was when we unbraided Rennie's mane. It no longer stood on end like a little fluffy cloud. After that braiding, it always laid down flat. So that's kind of sad. But the cool thing about the laying down flat was that it lays down perfectly on the show side, on the correct side. As usual, Rennie does everything perfect. Anyway, it was cool. The North American Sport Pony Registry is part of the American Warm Blood Society, and so it's a place for crossbred animals that have kind of a warm pedigree to have their conformation and talent tested and to become part of this registry. Rennie, it's specifically for driving animals and eventing animals and hunter jumpers, and so Rennie could do all of those easily, and he's just a super pro. I'm so proud of him. His mother is a blue registered North American sport pony and an American Foundation Horse Registry animal and an American Paint Horse Association animal. And Rennie himself has his own pedigree, so that makes me happy. So that's it. The next time you join us on Equine Travels with Laura, I'll be talking about Rennie's first jumping lesson the week after his 3rd birthday. It was a really big night. It was a great time. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.